Well, the military strikes from the US and Israel are continuing, but it's very clear that the US president wants to see regime change and he's calling on the Iranian people to deliver that. In fact, the US managed to hack into Iranian television so that some of the president's broadcast was broadcast in Iran with subtitles. Have a look.
America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action.
It's incredible to think, Elica, that millions of Iranians may have seen that, but we've seen many people out on the streets in Iran. What do you expect is happening and will happen in coming days?
Well, I think people will absolutely be heeding that message from President Trump. They did so the first time when he said, go out into the streets, take over your institutions. They listened, they went out. And now I think there is a definite acute awareness of the fact that this really is a time like no other. President Trump did say this in his speech. He said he didn't say this is the last time, but he said this is the best chance that you are ever going to get to free yourselves from this regime. And it's a small window in time. If we miss it, it's gone. I think the Iranian people are absolutely aware of that fact. And I think that they feel the responsibility and power of that fact. And I think as these strikes continue, and as this regime gets weaker and as the forces, the IRGC forces begin to defect to the other side, you're going to see the people coming out into the streets. And not only will they be coming out into the streets, they will now be armed. They will now be protected with the forces that are now walking alongside them. And if you remember in 1979, that was the same method that revolution, or shall we say a coup, was succeeded. There was a defection. The army did walk alongside the Iranian people, and that brought them to that regime change at the time.
It's hard to know exactly what is going on in the streets and what information is verified and what is not, but there are certainly reports that IRGC troops have been firing on some of the crowds celebrating. What are you hearing from your contacts in Iran? And do you think that the protests will be strong enough to overwhelm that those sort of efforts by the remnants of the regime to maintain control?
Yeah, I do, because I think at the stage where the regime is at its weakness, it isn't going to have the apparatus and methodology that it had to crush the protesters as it did in January. It's important to understand that before this war broke out over the weekend, there's been a long strategy within the IRGC's ranks of what would happen if the war inevitably broke out. There were conversations pertaining to the propaganda warfare in terms of Western media. It was long discussed that as soon as there were any strikes, they were going to after the protesters were killed in January, family members told us that they retained the bodies and they didn't return those bodies. They retained them so that they could repurpose them in the event of a war and claim those victims as casualties of US and Israeli strikes. So this has been a long standing pattern. If they are shooting protesters now, just as they shot protesters in the past, those corpses in a very chilling and dystopian way will be used as proof of casualties of Israel and the US. And unfortunately, we have seen just how quickly Western media regurgitates the Islamist propaganda as fact. Just today, it has been regurgitating the regime statement that the US-Israeli forces struck a school in Iran. Now, although we don't yet know whether that was an IRGC missile or a US-Israeli missile, we have a strong suspicion that it was, in fact, an IRGC missile. Why? Because it's sloppy, it's messy, it's careless, it's indiscriminate. We know that the US and Israel are extremely surgical, are extremely precise, and this is a deja vu of when Hamas's rocket backfired onto the hospital, and the Western media immediately said that this was an Israeli strike. So in the coming days, we're also going to need to keep a keen eye on Western media regurgitating this regime's propaganda, and it needs to be taken as seriously as North Korea and as 1984.
You are so right. You are so right, and those examples are spot on, and I've had a bit to say about that at the top of the program. Just in closing, Elica, I want to talk about regime change and whether it can be successful and whether Iran can be run successfully again. People have seen this sort of thing happen in the past and go to custard, to use an expression. But Iran is a highly sophisticated country with a highly educated population. I've been to Tehran, I've seen this myself. So there must be a lot of optimism about how a new regime could be put in place. And I want to get your thoughts also on the role of the diaspora in that. Iranians like yourselves with expertise and money around the globe would be looking to play a role, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it a sophisticated and educated population within Iran itself, but you have to remember it's also a highly politically mobilized population. That is the difference between Iran and Iraq. Saddam Hussein actually made it impossible for them to be politically mobilized at the time. But anyway, the point is, they are mobilized, and we have a transitional leader who is the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. And as we've seen, the people in Iran overwhelmingly calling his name to invite him in as that transitional leader. And then when he comes in, that will be the time where, you know, the constitution will be written, the constitution will be ratified. It will detail, it will outline, if the people choose a constitutional monarchy, what will be the limitations and the constraints of that monarchy, or will they choose a liberal democracy with no monarch at all? The point is that the Crown Prince is ready with a plan that will institute democracy. And at that point, it will be exactly what we've been calling for this entire time. The people themselves will be able to vote their leaders in power. And those leaders, you know, we from the diaspora can't say what that will look like, because we unfortunately haven't been able to be privy to exactly the sentiments of the Iranian population, who have been living in extreme suppression for the past 47 years. So once this transitional leader, the Crown Prince, gets to Iran and institutes this apparatus of transitional, facilitates the transitional transition into liberal democracy, that is when we are going to discover for the first time who it is that the Iranian people choose to represent for them, whether it's the Crown Prince as a constitutional monarch or a liberal secular democracy with some type of prime minister at the head of it.
Elica Le Bon, thanks so much for talking to us at this tumultuous time.
Thank you so much.